Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Pursuit. I'm your host, Ben Spangle, and we've got another great episode today at The Pursuit. You know, we're all about your best body, mind, spirit, and life. Today, I have Jillian Schecher with me. Jillian is a joy and mindfulness coach. She's the author of the Daily Joy Journal. She's a joy wizard, as we like to talk about. And she actually leads what are called joy sessions. She's a facilitator for it, pardon me. And you're going to love today. I've gotten to know Jillian recently, and you are going to love hearing from her. Jillian, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So let's, your brand, I mean, what you do is pretty unique. I don't know anyone else that does what you do. So tell us a bit about it. How did it come to be? How did you end up doing what you're doing?
Oh my, that feels loaded. So you might have to cut me off because I could talk and talk. But yeah, I feel like for me, joy has always been a strategy. You know, I've like people in my family like always considered me the joyful one. And so while I've used it, I think in my life, like just knowing that really it's about a sense of alignment for me. There are places for sure in my life where I feel like I left it by the side of the road. I talk about like just kind of leaving it behind. In my kind of youth, I was definitely like a people pleaser, definitely codependent, definitely cared more about like keeping everyone around me comfortable.
Mm.
And slowly over time, I kind of felt a distancing from myself and my own spirit. And in my kind of later 20s, early 30s, well, in my 30s, early 30s, I lost my dad suddenly to a heart attack. And it was at that point where previously I'd been just drinking like socially. When he died, it just felt like my world exploded and I started drinking wine every day just to kind of cope with my
Mm.
like not feel actually,
Mm.
like actually not feel my feelings. Um, and I also look back at that time and feel like I left myself, like I really went to caretake everyone else. I never stopped to think like, what do I need now?
Mm.
And
Mm.
how do I need to nurture myself or be nurtured through this loss?
Mm.
So for years I drank and it got progressively worse, which addiction does.
Mm.
And yeah, by the end it was just like a lot of suffering, um, a lot of like misery, it feels like, where you're just in it, really in it, knowing that you want to be more of who you are, but not sure how to do it. And so I talk about how I had like 3 dark nights of the soul, really came back to myself and chose sobriety, chose a life of like to come back to joy, to reclaim my joy, reclaim who I really am. And from that point forward, like that was my path to like my joy path, I would say. That's where it like got lit up, was in that moment where I came back to home to myself. I atoned for, you know, all the mistakes and the fuck ups and the places where I wasn't who I really am.
Mm.
Because that sort of shit, it creates a lot of suffering for those around us too, doesn't it?
Mm. Mm.
So yeah, I got kind of aligned, and from there forward is where the joy work started.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing.
yeah,
Thank you for sharing. It's
going deep.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It's so fascinating how often out of our own personal pain comes beautiful work
The
that we can
power.
then share with the rest of the world too.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. You said joy has been a strategy, and then of course you went through your addiction and depression, all of that stuff at those times, and then joy came out of that again. Of all right, it's time to step into more of who I am. You know, it's
Mhm.
funny in the business world. That's the world that I'm in. I mean, you don't hear too much about people saying joy is a strategy,
Mhm.
you know? So talk to us a
Yeah.
little bit about that, because I love it. I mean, my life has completely changed when I started to incorporate. I wouldn't have used those words, joy as a strategy, but that's ultimately what some of the things I've been doing. So tell us about it.
Yeah, I love it. We're so aligned.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, well, I firmly believe that joy is an inside job. And I also work with a lot of business owners who are doing amazing things in the world and by all means would seem like they are experiencing success and are just not actually happy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's when you are externalizing that, your happiness or your peace or your joy, so that everything around you needs to be okay in order for you to feel okay, or you know, everything around me needs to feel like what my definition of, or look like what my definition of success looks like. But if it's not feeling the way you want it to feel, then it's not really true success, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, when I kind of started on my path, like really started to feel the feelings, which I could talk for about 10 days around,
Mm-hmm.
but I won't. I'll be as as short-winded as I possibly can around it. But I feel like when I started to feel my feelings, it was really this journey of like, who am I, and how do I use my feelings as a compass? And I think in our world, especially in business, it's like it's about performance, it's about like optics, it's about money, it's about all of,
Yeah,
again, these things outside of us.
correct.
When really, when you get down to it, like our feelings are here to guide us. And if we're not in touch with them, if we don't have the ability to feel them, and not just the good ones, but all of them, then we're missing out on a key component of joy, which I feel is that alignment piece. So yeah, the people I work with are like, it's like we're either building their business with joy, or we're building joy back into their business and lives. And I feel like there's no longer that boundary between life and business anymore. Like that to me
For
is like
sure.
so 2019.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
funny because if you look at, we're probably similar in age, but if you look at a lot of our parents, I mean, there was not a lot talk about feeling your feelings, expressing your feelings. It was more of burying, and certainly their parents would have been similar like that too.
Yeah.
And there's certainly, the world is opening up more to this idea of it. Yet I think there's still often there can be a lot of stigma, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
around it. And I, no doubt in my mind, anybody watching this right now, anybody listening to this right now, if they're honest, they'd think, yeah, I would like more joy in my life.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
would love to have that. They think they want more money. They think they, we want the body, we want the relationship, we want the car. But the
Yeah.
truth is, it's the feeling is
Hmm.
what we're really seeking.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, okay, I want more joy. That sounds like a
Yeah.
good strategy. What are some things I can start doing?
Yeah. Yeah. So I actually created what I call the joy method. And for me, it's just I think a lot of in terms of strategy. And so I call it soulful strategy, because it's like how to use the mind as a tool instead of a weapon
Mm,
against ourselves, which is so easy to do. So it's really using, first starting with the feelings. So beginning to develop a relationship with yourself where you're able to feel all of the feelings and not just the good ones. Like joy seems like this bright, exuberant, shiny experience, but it can actually be a very deep level experience. And for anyone who's gone through contrast, or the things that I would say you would never choose in your life, um, you might have had the experience of walking a path of grief and joy at the same time. When you lose a loved one, but you're steeped in memories, or you're really, really in that place that is very feels very divinely spiritual, or
mm,
connected, or otherworldly, or those kinds of moments. Um, so I feel like being able to honor our feelings, all of them, give room to all of them, start to use them as a compass, start to get curious about them, rather than maybe resisting them or
mhm,
hanging on to them.
mhm,
Beautiful book by Jill Bolt Taylor, who is a neuroscientist, and she had a stroke and studied her own stroke.
hmm.
Um, and she studied her own recovery, and she found that a feeling only lasts 90 seconds. And
Interesting.
this, honest to God, was how I was able to be sober.
Wow.
Because if it wasn't for that, I was so overwhelmed with like with the feelings that I'd never owned or felt. Like it was really, really just wild, like how painful that was, actually, to be like, oh my God, how do you do this? Like even the joy, I feel like I was numbing that. And Brene Brown talks a lot in her vulnerability talks around like how you can't selectively numb. So by
Mm.
numbing pain, I was also numbing joy and gratitude in the higher vibrational frequencies. So when I got sober, even the like all of the joy was actually overwhelming. Like the joy, the gratitude to be alive, and reconnecting with myself and others in my life again. So again, these are all loaded questions, but I would say, so coming back home to yourself, and that looks different for everyone, but I feel like joy is actually a habit. It's a practice.
Mm.
So I even talk a lot about ritual, which to me sounds maybe wooey to some of your listeners, maybe not. But it's really just a practice. Like, what are you doing every day to connect more deeply to yourself? What are you doing every day to honor your feelings? In the joy method, it's the feelings and then the thoughts. And as you know, like our thoughts are so powerful. That is expanding energy in the
Mhm,
world and in our
mhm,
experiences. And so if we're just going about our lives willy-nilly, we could very well be expanding things we don't want to have happen. So it's understanding that about the mind and really using the focus as a magic wand, and consistently asking the self, like, what do I want to have happen, instead of focusing on all the things that suck or aren't
Mm-hmm.
going well. And so there's that, and then there's really setting intention. So being intentional when we understand the mind is a tool, that's a powerful tool, then we can start to use it to pave, I call it like paving a pathway for ourselves, paving a pathway forward, toward what we want to have happen.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's all around like inspired action.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like law of attraction, I love, you love.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, we get it, we love
Mm-hmm.
it. But when I first started doing joy sessions, it was very steeped in law of attraction. And what I found was missing was the action bit. Like people, I was having these little joy sessions in my living room and having 10 people over at lunchtime, and they would leave and I'd be like, something feels incomplete, like
Mm-hmm.
it's something's kind of missing. And then I was just kind of feeling into like, what is this actually, what's going on here? What is my intention with these people, with myself in this lifetime? And it was like, there's momentum missing. There's like commitment missing. There was. So I brought in some psychology. I studied psychology previously, and brought in some CBT, like around the thoughts and the behaviors and the actions, the thoughts, feelings, and actions all being interrelated, and how we can actually shift things so profoundly by whether it's with the feelings or the thoughts or the behaviors. So it's like taking accountability for our lives as deliberate designers of our lives, being willing to take action to like almost move the needle. Like, in business, we are moving the needle. And when you
Mm-hmm.
focus on how can I move the needle, that's where you get some real traction, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah. I think so much of this stuff, because it's a lot of these things are deep conversations, right? Ones that we can
yeah.
talk a lot about. And it is at times myself, even as I'm teaching this stuff, it's easy to be philosophical about it.
Yeah.
And here's how this works. Then to actually turn it into something
Tools.
exactly practical, right?
Okay.
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 That makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense. What do I do?
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people on the note of when you first started doing those sessions, and a lot of it incorporate the law of attraction, I think people can be on often either side of the pendulum. Some people, when it comes to action, their only strategy is work their asses off, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I'm just going to work harder. I am going to
Mm-hmm.
work more hours. You do more of this, do more of this, do more. And, there's the odd person that truly does love living that way, but I find most don't, right? That's not their
Yeah.
dream to work 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
Then you've got people probably on the other side that are just too much into, I can sit here and think about it and it'll come.
Yeah.
What do you think the sweet spot is? Where do you think the magical spot of creation is?
Oh, another good question. Well, I do want to talk about like actual practical tools, because I think those will be
Yeah.
really helpful. And I
Let's come
get what
back
you're
to
saying
those.
around that. We'll do that.
Yeah.
But I think the sweet spot, like I feel like it's like this is where I talk a lot about our own inner wisdom, and really knowing like what that is individually and for each person. I know for me, like it's typically it feels like there's discomfort in it, and because it's edge walking. So it's either you're a doer,
Mm.
you're doing all the time, and it's like pulling that back and coming more into the
Mm-hmm.
beingness, which most people I work with, that's the challenge, because that's how I am too. Like I
They're
could
the
just go, go,
doers.
go. Yeah.
Right.
Or you're more of into the being, and maybe a little bit more passive around like the action component.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that inspired action look like? But I think the biggest thing, so in the method, I talk about inspired action, and I actually never really fully understood what this meant until this year,
Okay.
when I was, things had fallen apart once again. I don't know how many pivots you've done, but been doing a plenty, and was in one of those another one of those contrast moments, which I've come to appreciate. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I just have to revision and get back in alignment and get back in the joy zone, I call it.
Right.
And I realized what inspired action was, and it's not just taking action. I thought it was like inspiring yourself to act
Okay.
previously.
Okay.
But what I've realized, it's actually waiting until you're inspired to take the action. Like you feel the inspiration in spirit. Like
Mm.
inspired action. So you feel the inspiration, and you actually like you're taking the action, and you're committed to that action. You're committed to moving the needle, to moving things forward.
Mm.
Um, so I would say that. So like looking at what inspired action means from both components, like whether that's the overworking, or maybe the needing little bit more of that spark or that fire and
Mm-hmm.
transformational energy.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. I think that's so great. One of the things I've been toying with lots, and as I'm working with people, helping them with this idea too, is that I think coming from that place of inspired action, and you can act without inspiration. There's no doubt. It's just
Mm-hmm.
your results are way less effective. I mean, that's
Yeah.
ultimately, you're out of alignment. And so you're trying to work your way into it. I think a few things can happen. I'm curious your thoughts on it. One, I think that sometimes, because we're always balancing in between, again, if this is information that you that are listening, you like this stuff, you think, man, this makes sense to me. You've also got old belief systems of how you view the world,
Yeah.
right? And those can be conflicting and contradicting. And so it can be a challenge sometimes because you're okay. No, I mean, this does make sense.
Hmm.
Want to lead from inspiration, but then you get fearful of if I'm not doing enough. And you know what I'm going with this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, I think sometimes one of the great things we could do is, okay, if I'm going to have that inspiration to act, in spirit to act, let's get to some practical stuff. What's something I could do? So I'm out of alignment, right? I know I'm not
Hmm.
feeling great. I'm in a low level vibration. Give us some
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah. Okay. You got it. Okay. Well, first, I believe like meditation was my savior.
Yeah.
And truly, I think the reason for that was because it requires us to go within instead
Mm,
of that seeking externally and maybe seeking answers or mm, validation or whatever those things are. And so for me, it was really like going within deeply. And it took about a year for me to realize the benefits of meditation because I would sit there and think the whole time, like it was a real interesting journey of like patience, which
right.
I don't have a lot of, or didn't. I'm working on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so meditation was key because I think that ability to really be in the seat of the witness, not only the
Mhm.
connection, like for me, I'm more spiritually grounded. So it's like that connection to something bigger and beyond, like really truly feeling that and creating a sense of inner sturdiness. But beyond that, it's like the ability to witness the thoughts, which to me is money. Like
Mhm.
when you can witness your thoughts, you are in a seat of power because then you get to use your mind as a beautiful, magical wand instead of
Yeah.
something that's taking you out all the time?
Yeah.
So meditation for sure. I also, well, I use the joy method, which I kind of touched on, but
Of course.
which is really built into, I wrote a daily joy journal. So I call it joy journaling, whether you use my book or not, but really it's using, cognitive behavioral theory and therapy mixed with law of attraction to focus the mind and heart every single day, which really I would say is intentional living.
Mm.
But this would be a practice for aligned living, to really get us into the being, like how do I want to feel today instead of like what do I want to do, or yeah, kind of making it more of a connective experience, more intentional experience every day.
Mm-hmm. It
Mm-hmm.
makes total sense.
Yeah.
I've done in the last week, at the time of this recording, anyways, I've done 3 or 4 different interviews. Every single person, when I talk about, give us something, and meditation comes up every single time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it really is. It seems like most people that are starting, living life at a higher level, I mean, meditation becomes paramount. Paramount. The
Yeah.
first guy I interviewed was all about pain management and how to transform
Mm.
your pain, and that's what he brought up. And there's more to it. That's what the next guy was all about abundance. Now you're hearing from Jillian on joy, and there's
Meditation.
a common theme. There's a common theme for sure.
I love it. That's collective consciousness. I love it.
It 100% is.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear your take on this idea, and because I think that a lot of today, especially the
Mm-hmm.
way social media is, the way it's designed to hijack our brain, I think a lot of, anyways, my point with this is this idea: pleasure versus joy, because I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of people that feel like, no, 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 I mean, there's lots of stuff I like doing.
Yeah.
Drinking alcohol as an example is a pleasurable experience. It can be,
Yeah.
anyways. It can be very unpleasant too, but
Yeah.
talk about that. What's your take on pleasure versus joy?
Oh, I love it. Okay, so we both love Esther Hicks
Mm-hmm.
and Abraham. Um, so for me, so I truly believe that we are here to feel good. Okay.
Mm,
And that does not mean feel comfortable.
mm.
And so for me, the difference is a human versus soul difference. In the
What do you,
humanness,
yeah, go
we
ahead.
want to feel comfortable. We want to feel good, which equals pleasure in our humanness.
Okay.
From a soul perspective, we want to feel aligned, which is like soul joy, I would say.
Mm,
So I feel like joy is more of an internal, like soulful experience, and it can look bright and shiny, more like happy, or but that pleasure is really related. Yeah, it's related to the humanness, like pleasure and pain, and that kind of dichotomy. And I love pleasure. I think pleasure is amazing. I think it's a great barometer as well. But I think it can steer us down the wrong path in our human mind and selves. Um, because like pleasure will say have another drink in that moment, won't it? Or
Right.
have another chocolate bar, or
Yeah.
watch another show,
Yeah.
or keep scrolling on your phone. Like it's like dopamine related, it feels
For
like.
sure it is. Yeah, it
You
totally
know?
is.
Um, Whereas joy is like, sure you want to do that?
Right. Right.
Like joy knows better.
Right. Yeah.
I think of it like high self, low self a little. That's how
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do like
Okay.
clarity through contrast is like, what is low self? You know, when I'm feeling misaligned or shitty, it's always
Yeah.
like checking in with the thoughts, or are they low self thoughts or high self thoughts? And, you know,
Mm,
pleasure, I think it's beautiful in balance.
right.
Um, and, you know, yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to play with. What do you think about it?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I love what you talked about for sure. I think that as I've thought more about it, I mean, pleasure is, it's kind of like that temporary thing, something
Mm-hmm.
external. I do this external thing, and then,
Mm-hmm.
I watch the movie, I play the video game, I eat the chocolate bar, the chips, the drink, people are into drugs or whatever. And it's
Yeah.
that temporary experience of a positive feeling. And that's, of course,
Mm-hmm.
why we want it, because we want to feel.
Yeah.
Where I think, I guess for me, joy is just more that, as you said, but that internal experience. I don't
Mm-hmm.
need anything external in order to feel that. The
Mm-hmm.
sensation, I mean, in some ways, at times, maybe they feel similar. I don't know. You know what? I'd
Yeah.
be curious. I do have no idea on the answer to this, but
Mm-hmm.
pleasure related activities are often, like you said, dopamine related, right? I scroll the Instagram. I love it. I mean, I'm hooked on this thing. Why? Because that's how they designed it, right? You get the likes, you get the
Yeah.
comments, just like
Playing right
dopamine,
into their
dopamine,
hands.
dopamine, boom. And the chocolate bar, all those things are the dopamine hit. What I'd be really curious is, what does joy, when, if they could measure it, this person truly, they're feeling joy. I wonder what's going on in their body.
Mm.
What are the neurochemicals? What are the neurotransmitters? It'd be interesting. I'd be
Mm.
curious,
Yeah, we need to get a doctor on board.
we're going to have to. Yeah.
Unless someone's already done it, then we just need to do a little research.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd
But
love to.
it'd be an interesting thought for sure.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
Tell us a bit, I'd love to hear maybe some, I guess for, some kind of like client breakthroughs or something like that. I mean, people that you
Mm.
helped with this, and then how did their life start to change? What have you noticed when people started to use the joy method?
I love that. Yeah, because it feels really remarkable and um, inspiring. So I'm currently guiding some facilitators, so I call it the Joy Sessions Facilitator Program, and they like the people in this program are, it feels like next level, and they are all kind of living, breathing, embodying the joy work, which I would say is the joy method. Um, and yeah, I feel like one person in particular, I call them joy warriors. I call everyone in the community joy warriors. Has used the joy method, is like really using it and for all aspects of life. So she said how the joy method is, she's using it with her husband and she's using it with her kids, and like she's using it everywhere, and just noticing such a significant shift in her life, and particularly in her marriage. She was sharing with me how she kind of was using it, and I was like, were you talking to him about it? She's like, no, I'm just like moving through it and then sharing components of it, like really around what could, because when we can notice our thoughts, it's so powerful, because that it's not really about you, like these, we take our lives so personally until you realize like everyone is in their own life that personally,
Mm-hmm.
and that we're all doing our best, and that we're all actually deeply connected, and we're all mirrors for each other. So when you have that level of awareness, and you can approach relationships differently in terms of like, how can I hear you better, like what do you need and what does this look like, and really understand each other at a deeper level. So that was profound. One of my biggest, a couple, like I really actually like work. So a lot of my clients are women.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think just because I'm a woman, I'm a woman,
Mm-hmm.
they identify with me. So it's kind of easy to see themselves in me, or like see what that might look like for them, or however that looks. But I really love working with men, because I feel like there is such a transformation possible when you give, men, and I'll just say people who haven't had access to, emotional tools or things to tap into that side of themselves, because of the belief that like they're not into it, or they don't know how, or it's just like not something men would want to do. But
Mm-hmm.
what I have found is like, I have a client who, I went to go work with him and his wife actually, and I brought my crystals, and I show up and I take him out and I light a candle, and he's just like, holy shit, like, and very honest man, just sharing like, wow, like that's weird. Um, but the willingness to actually move through the process, like with me, and like I would just say and I told him today actually, like you are you're an amazing like joy leader, and the way that he uses meditation now and the joy method and journaling to shift his life. Like even in session today, he was saying, yeah, like I'm just gonna, focus, like talking about the challenges, which we all have challenges and limitations or the contrast we experience, but how he's gonna focus on his meditation and his journaling and get and stay in alignment and keep his vibration up and like all of these things. And I'm like, holy amazing. So
Mm,
yeah, I feel like the work that I do in the world, like it's become clear that it's meant to be practical,
mm,
like you said, it can get really intellectual or either like intellectual and really grounded or super I don't want to say channeled, but like wooey for
mhm,
better
mhm,
lack of a better term. And people just don't really have anything to like really grasp onto that is something that would help them. And I feel like what I realized about joy is that, when I'm thinking of like how I can serve best, it's really like how can you help someone to feel better right now? Like
mm.
what could you give them right now to feel better, whether it's on a podcast or in an email or, on social media. And I love social media too. Like I think it's a powerful tool for positive shift in the world.
It
That's how
is.
I
Yeah.
use it.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, just knowing that people just want to feel better, and if they're coming to you, then it's because you have medicine that they need, like just kind of trusting that, and then just showing up authentically and give them what you got. Give them what you got. That's what I always say.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Really great. I think a byproduct too is as you focus on your own joy, part of
yeah,
me is a soulful strategy, like you talked about, then
hmm
you do get to, I mean, the natural byproduct is that wears off on other people. You get to bring that to the world and how you can give, whether
yeah,
it's a compliment, whether it's just a eye to eye connection. I think today, again, because of cell phones, that as connected as we are, I think we're often more disconnected,
yeah,
less and less eye contact with strangers, et cetera. So I think there's so many ways that we can bring more joy to the world for sure. Yeah.
yeah,
It,
yeah. I love
it
it.
definitely is. Going back, I'm curious, what was the hardest part about getting sober?
The feelings. The hardest part about getting sober was the feelings, and then really being willing to move through the discomfort around not hurting people, but like as I reclaimed my own joy, it meant that I wasn't making everyone around me comfortable anymore.
Mm.
So like my family was scared of me because I became boundary lady. And I was like, no, I started using the no word, the no bomb, I'll call it. And it's like, no, I will not do that. And
Yeah.
just not being willing to sacrifice myself anymore. I think that was really, really uncomfortable. And so like I like the not drinking was not the hard part. It was actually my relationships that were tricky to
Mm.
navigate back into alignment. And it took time and it was really, really uncomfortable. Like I remember just thinking like, holy shit, like I can see why people, continue on because it's so challenging. But my family they're amazing, and my brother is the best joy warrior I've ever known. He also practices meditation every day. He's got a better night routine than I have. Like if I call him past 9:30, he'll be like, "Why are you calling me so late? It's my wind down routine." He's got his sage diffuser, and he's had his Himalayan salt bath, and he's
Yeah.
got, he's doing his meditation. I'm like, that's amazing. Like again, I think like for me, it's really knowing that I'm not here to be perfect, and I don't preach perfection. Like I actually am here to show the path in terms of how human you can be. And it's
Yeah.
why I look at my history with the drinking and addiction and like I thank it because it's allowed me to be, so relatable to people who are also in it. Like this is the human experience and it is wild. It can be really wild. We're
Yeah.
not here to be perfect. So it's a practice that I commit to every single day. And I'm not perfect at that either. But the more that I show up for myself, the more that I mind my own light and
Mm-hmm.
my own energy, the more that I focus on like giving from that overflow. I think it was that shift with sobriety
Mm.
was like realizing that like I could actually be giving so much more by giving from my own overflow, and that my desire to keep those around me comfortable was actually keeping them small.
Mm.
Yeah, because we're not here to be comfortable, you know?
Mm.
And so it's like, I'll protect you, I'll keep you happy. And this, yeah, well, how is that teaching them any tools around like what it means to walk their own edges in this lifetime and grow in their own way, you know?
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that you share with vulnerability your own path
hmm
and what that's like, because I think it opens up for all of us to, okay, Yeah, that's wonderful. Someone else went
Yeah.
through it, and to be able to share it, I think it's really great. I think it's
Yeah.
powerful. Opposite question on that, you may have answered it already. What was the greatest blessing of getting sober?
Mm. Yeah, I feel like that one is really like coming home to myself. Like really, I can't explain it, and maybe you've got listeners that have walked the path of addiction, but that moment of when you choose differently,
Mm,
like when you're like, okay, I've fucked up or I've done horrible things or whatever that looks like in your mind and your heart. It's like
mm-hmm.
when you say like it's almost like a cleaning of the slate. It's why like I believe all the joy work that I do, it's around befriending the self and it's around compassion for self.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in the moment where I forgave myself
Mm,
that was like it felt like a miracle.
really?
Yeah. And like a coming home. And from then forward, it's been like this balance of what that looks like. And there are moments I still come home to myself when, I've made another mistake or something doesn't work out right, or I hurt someone I love unintentionally, those places.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't show up in the best way, or, all of that sort of stuff. It's like these opportunities to continue to come home and unfold more of who we are in this lifetime. I celebrate those.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I think what you're sharing is so important for everybody too, of just the idea that, your behavior and actions are not always going to be perfect. You,
Yeah.
as a spiritual being, of course, are perfect. The
Yeah.
humanness of us is imperfect. I mean, there's not going
Yeah.
to be perfection in all that you do. And I think that I used to feel this way for sure. Actually, Robin Sharma, you familiar with
Yeah.
him? Yeah, yeah. It was him at a seminar. I went to Toronto with a good friend of mine, Paul. And of course, Robin coaches billionaires and the top athletes and all that stuff. And I don't remember exactly what he said, but I remember where it was this aha for me. This is a decade ago, probably now. And he
Hmm.
said something to the extent of, he said, hey, listen, even the best of the best, the world class, the top of the top, you think it's that they're kind of like robots and they never have off days and they never mess up. It's not the case at all. They do.
Yeah.
They're just not so hard on themselves and they get back on track.
Yeah.
And it was almost like Jillian, it was like, oh, I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not, maybe there isn't something wrong with me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you sharing
Yeah.
that, how, listen, I'm practicing this stuff every day
Yeah.
and working on getting better. And it's so true, right? It's
Yeah.
so true. Uh,
Permission to be human.
yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mastery is never ending.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you think you're a master, you're probably not.
You're probably a disaster.
Yeah. You probably
Just
are.
joking.
Yeah. Totally. You are. Yeah. So true.
Yeah.
Hey, so people can get the Joy Journal. Where's the best place? What's your website?
So the Joy Journal is on the dailyjoyjournal.com.
dailyjoyjournal.com. Okay, we'll get that to
It's
everybody.
the
Thank
dailyjoyjournal.com.
you.
Yeah. And I am found on jillianschecher.com.
Okay.
And Jillian Schecher on all the channels, the regular channels.
We'll have that on the show notes and everything. Connect with Jillian, everybody. Get into her work. And if you're wanting to get into journaling, if you've been thinking that's a good thing, I should do that. Definitely get started there. I love the idea of
Yeah.
what you're talking about with cognitive behavioral therapy combined with law of attraction. And I think it's wonderful. Journaling's transformed my life. Yeah.
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 Awesome.
Yeah. In closing, what do you want to leave people with? If you had one wish for them, one thought you want to, if they're going to remember Jillian Schecher, man, she said this.
Make it good, Schecher. I think it would be that joy is your number one job. Like, what would it look like to make joy your number one job in your life? And yeah, just I look forward to hearing how that unfolds.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I like it. That's so great. Everybody, hey, thanks for tuning in. I told you it was going to be good. And get checked in with Jillian's work, learn more about it, pardon me, and make joy your number one job. Your life is going to get better, that's for sure, just on that alone and doing it. If you're new to the show, make sure to subscribe. As always, make sure to share this episode with at least one person. Tag Jillian, tag myself. We appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you soon. Thanks, Jillian.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
You bet.